My husband stood on stage holding a crystal award and smiled as hundreds of people applauded. "This project wouldn't have been possible without my leadership," he proudly declared. I smiled too, until every screen in the ballroom suddenly went black. A single slide appeared showing the original project files. The author's name wasn't his. It was mine. The room fell silent. My husband slowly turned toward me as whispers spread through the crowd. Then the company's CEO stood up, looked directly at me, and said, "Mrs. Carter, would you please come to the stage? We have something everyone deserves to hear." My name is Natalie Carter. I'm 35 years old, and I'm a senior structural engineer specializing in large-scale transportation projects. I've spent 13 years solving problems most people never notice, calculating load capacities, designing safer structures, and finding solutions before anyone else realizes there's a problem. I've never cared much about standing in the spotlight. I cared about the work. That's why what happened hurts so much. My husband, Ethan, worked at the same engineering firm. He wasn't an engineer. He was a project manager, excellent with clients, presentations, and negotiations. We often joked that I built the projects while he convinced people to believe in them. For years, that balance worked perfectly. Then our company announced a nationwide competition for a multi-billion-dollar high-speed rail expansion. Winning it would transform the company. For nearly 4 months, I practically lived in my home office. Most nights I worked until 2 in the morning, surrounded by blueprints, simulation reports, and engineering models. Ethan brought me coffee, encouraged me when I grew frustrated, and constantly reminded me that this project belonged to both of us. "We're a team," he always said. When I finally developed an innovative bridge support design that reduced construction costs while increasing long-term durability, our entire department celebrated. The executive committee loved it. The client approved it. The company won the contract. Everyone was thrilled. At first, Ethan always introduced the proposal the way we'd agreed. My wife created the engineering solution, he'd proudly tell clients. I'm just helping present it. But slowly, something changed. During one meeting, he referred to it as my design. I assumed he'd simply misspoken. A week later, another executive congratulated Ethan for his brilliant engineering work. He smiled. He accepted the compliment. He never corrected them. That bothered me. When I mentioned it later, Ethan laughed. "They know you're involved." I'm just the one standing in front of the room. I wanted to believe him. After all, he was my husband. Over the following weeks, more interviews followed. Industry magazines, client meetings, corporate presentations. Every time, Ethan became more closely associated with the project. My name slowly disappeared from the conversations. Whenever I brought it up, he wrapped an arm around my shoulders and smiled. "Babe, this helps both of us. We're married. My success is your success." I convinced myself he was right, until the company announced a formal awards banquet celebrating the project's completion. Nearly 400 employees, executives, government officials, and business partners filled the ballroom that evening. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished tables. A large stage stood beneath 2 enormous projection screens. As dinner ended, the CEO stepped to the podium. "And now," he announced, "I'd like to recognize the individual whose leadership secured the most important project in our company's history." He smiled toward Ethan. The ballroom erupted in applause. Ethan walked confidently onto the stage. He accepted the Crystal Award, then looked proudly across the room. "This achievement," he said into the microphone, "wouldn't have been possible without my vision and leadership." I felt my heart sink. Not once, not a single time, did he mention my name. I lowered my eyes to my untouched dinner plate. Then suddenly, both projection screens behind him went completely black. The CEO slowly stood, looked toward the technicians, then quietly said, "Before we continue, there's one important detail this room hasn't seen yet." The applause slowly faded. A quiet murmur spread across the ballroom as both projection screens flickered back to life. The CEO remained standing beside the podium. "I'm sorry for interrupting the celebration," he said calmly, "but our Innovation Review Committee completed an internal audit this morning." He looked toward Ethan. "And the results deserve to be shared before this award goes any further." The room fell silent. The first slide appeared. It showed the project's digital archive. Across the top were dates, file names, and revision histories. Then one line was enlarged across both giant screens. Original engineering author, Natalie Carter. I heard someone behind me whisper, "Wait, that's Ethan's wife." Another executive leaned closer to the screen. I thought he designed it. The next slide appeared. Every engineering draft, every structural calculation, every computer simulation, every design revision. Each one carried the same digital signature. Created by Natalie Carter. Timestamp stretched back 4 months. There was no confusion. No missing information. Just documented facts. Ethan's smile slowly disappeared. He looked toward the CEO. "There has to be some misunderstanding." The CEO answered politely. "There isn't." He nodded toward the company's chief technology officer. The CTO stepped forward carrying a tablet. "Our engineering servers automatically record every revision." He touched the screen. A timeline appeared showing hundreds of design updates. Every major technical breakthrough originated from my employee account. Every structural model, every safety calculation, every cost-saving recommendation. My name appeared again and again. The CTO continued. Mr. Carter participated in project coordination and client presentations. He paused. But the engineering innovation recognized by this award was developed by Mrs. Natalie Carter. The ballroom became completely still. I wished I could disappear beneath the table. Instead, the CEO looked directly at me. "Mrs. Carter, would you please join us on stage?" My legs felt strangely heavy as I stood. Hundreds of people turned to watch me walk toward the platform. The CEO greeted me with a warm handshake. "Natalie," he said quietly, "thank you for your professionalism. You never once interrupted the celebration. You allowed the evidence to speak before you did." I smiled politely. I never wanted attention. I only wanted the work to be represented honestly. The CEO nodded. And that's exactly why this moment matters. Several senior engineers stood and applauded. Then more people joined them. Within seconds, the entire ballroom was on its feet. Not because I had demanded recognition, because the facts had earned it. Ethan finally stepped toward the microphone. "I never intended to take credit," he began. "I thought." His voice faded. The engineering timeline was still displayed behind him. Every sentence he tried to form dissolved beneath the documented history. No one interrupted him. No one accused him. The evidence had already answered every question. The CEO gently placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "This isn't about embarrassment. It's about giving credit where it belongs." He turned back toward the audience, then smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen, the board of directors met earlier this morning. And before tonight ends, there's one more decision we'd like to announce." The ballroom remained silent. Hundreds of people looked from the stage to the enormous screens, then back at me. The CEO smiled warmly before picking up the Crystal Award Ethan had been holding only moments earlier. "I believe," he said, "this belongs to the person who actually earned it." He walked across the stage and placed the award in my hands. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Not because I was overwhelmed by the applause. Because I'd spent months convincing myself recognition didn't matter. Until someone else tried to erase it completely. The audience rose to its feet again. This applause felt different. It wasn't for a speech. It wasn't for a title. It was for the truth. The CEO waited until the room became quiet again. "There's one more announcement." He unfolded a letter carrying the company's official seal. "Effective immediately, the board of directors has unanimously approved the promotion of Natalie Carter to Director of Engineering Innovation." A wave of surprised whispers filled the ballroom. The CEO continued. "This promotion isn't based on one successful project. It's based on years of documented excellence, technical leadership, and professional integrity." He turned toward me. "Congratulations." I accepted the handshake, still trying to process everything happening around me. Then Ethan slowly stepped forward. For the first time all evening, he wasn't smiling. He looked at me instead of the audience. "Natalie." His voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I'm sorry. I kept telling myself that because I handled the presentations, I deserved part of the recognition. But somewhere along the way, I stopped telling people where the work actually came from. He lowered his eyes. I should have corrected them the very first time. The room stayed silent. I looked at the man I'd loved for 7 years. I appreciate your apology. He looked hopeful. Then I continued. But trust isn't lost because someone makes one mistake. It's lost when the same choice is repeated again and again. He slowly nodded. I understand. The CEO addressed the audience once more. Beginning next month, every major engineering project will include mandatory authorship documentation and contribution records. Our company succeeds because talented people work together. Everyone deserves to receive credit for the work they actually do. The audience applauded. Months later, I settled into my new office overlooking the city's skyline. Instead of working alone, I led a team of young engineers who constantly challenged one another with new ideas. At our very first meeting, I told them something I wish someone had told me years earlier. If you solve the problem, your name belongs beside the solution. Not because recognition is everything, but because honesty is. Sometimes new engineers ask why our company is so careful about documenting every contribution. I simply smile. Every successful project hanging on the office walls reminds me of that evening. The night I almost stayed silent. The night evidence spoke louder than arguments. The night I realized something no one can ever steal forever. Awards can be handed to the wrong person. Applause can be misplaced. Even recognition can be delayed. But real work leaves a trail. And eventually, the truth always knows exactly where to find its rightful owner.